Welcome to the Aging and Long-Term Services Department Capital Projects Bureau webinar. Today's webinar will cover the 2018 Capital Outlay Request application. The source of funding for this application will be the 2018 General Obligation Bond. My name is Rebecca Martinez, and I am the Bureau Chief for the Capital Projects Bureau. And with me here today is Barbara Romero, the Coordinator for the Capital Projects Bureau. Today we will be presenting the application guidance document and the application itself. If you don't have a copy of those in front of you, you may want to pause right now and print those documents out so you can follow along during this presentation. Before I get right into the 2018 General Obligation Bond, I'd like to talk quickly about the 2016 General Obligation Bond. As you all know, this bond was voted on during the recent election in November. It passed, and the State Board of Finance is now preparing to sell the bonds. As part of this bond sale, each appropriation contained in that bond must complete a questionnaire. So each fiscal agent named in those appropriations will very soon be receiving a questionnaire to fill out to document project readiness. There is a very small window of opportunity to fill out the questionnaire and get it submitted back to the State Board of Finance. ALTSD will assist in this process. So if the application is not, the questionnaire is not timely submitted, we will be giving you a call, but be on the lookout for that document. The 2018 General Obligation Bond will finance this application process. And just a little bit about general obligation bonds. GOBs allow the state to borrow money to finance capital improvement projects. They're voted on by the electorate, and the principal and interest on the bonds are paid out of property taxes. Now, please note, as you're developing your application, please build in contingencies for price increases. It will be spring of 2019 before this funding is available, so you want to make sure you build in some costs to account for the price increases that you will see in your project by 2019. The 2018 application purpose and priorities are as follows. The Aging and Long-Term Services Department will consider critical and high-need project applications which address an urgent need that immediately endangers occupants of the premises or creates a serious threat to the health and/or safety of citizens. So we will be looking at situations where immediate action is necessary. We'll look at project applications where that can document the situation would disrupt a senior center from operating, or failure is imminent if not corrected in a timely manner. We'll also be looking at projects where the threat can be supported by a subject matter expert. Barbara Romero will talk in greater detail in just a bit on the project evaluation form and the subject matter expert documentation that is required. We'll also be looking at applications where the situation was not a direct cause of poor maintenance or neglect, and that steps were taken to prevent, alleviate, or correct the situation. And also we'll consider projects where the resources required to correct the situation were unavailable. Our 2018 application is in a fillable format. It has been revised from last year's application, and I'm sure you'll find it improved from our previous version. Now, as far as capital outlay reform goes, for the past few years, the state of New Mexico has been scrutinizing the capital outlay process, and it's resulted in increased fiscal and programmatic scrutiny. Just recently in 2016, the Legislative Finance Committee and Department of Finance and Administration established a work group to take a look at the whole capital outlay process. And from this work group, some documents were developed, a best practices document and a guidelines document. These documents have been distributed to your legislators and political subdivisions, as well as state agencies. And the goal of these documents is to assist our legislators in their decision-making process when determining local project needs, while at the same time preserving the legislators' options to select and prioritize projects within their district. I'm happy to state that the Aging and Long-Term Services Department has incorporated many of these requirements into their application process. Our application has been through many revisions, and built into our application, we've established a criticality and need and the recommendation of projects that reduce health and safety hazards and liability issues. Also built into our applications, we have many questions about project readiness. We want to make sure projects that demonstrate that they have all the plans, funds, resources in place to complete a project within a reasonable amount of time following the enactment of the capital bill. Leveraging of state funds with local and federal and other sources. The ALTSD process requires that leveraging, as well as the applications that are submitted to your legislators. Compliance with Executive Order 2013-006 is a requirement in the ALTSD application. This compliance requires that political subdivisions have timely audits in place, approved budgets, and financial reports so that the state can better assess a grantee's accounting methods and procedures. We must be also able to confirm that a project will be able to encumber 5% of funds within 6 months of the bond issuance and expend at least 85% of those funds within 18 months if it's a general obligation bond. The applications must also have a project evaluation form certified by a subject matter expert. The application must also include the infrastructure capital improvement plan submitted by the local governmental entity for its senior center facilities. And the project must be certified by the fiscal agent, confirming that the operation and maintenance costs will be adequately addressed. And also, an operating and use agreement must be in place if the governmental entity is submitting an application on behalf of nonprofit providers. The application deadline is Friday, April 14th of 2017 at 5:00 p.m. We must receive an original and 2 copies. Please also copy your area agency on aging, and their addresses and contact information is provided on pages 1 and 2 of the guidance. Just another note for PSAs 2, 3, and 4, the non-metro area agency on aging will only accept electronic submittals of the application. This year's application funding categories include code compliance and renovations, equipment, vehicles, construction and major additions, and plan and design. Now, just a few words about the equipment category. In 2016, new precedent was set in the severance tax bond bill, in which Governor Martinez line item vetoed projects where $10,000 or less was allocated for that project. In Governor Martinez's House Executive Message dated March of 2016, she states, "I have vetoed every project in this bill for which less than $10,000 was allocated because I firmly believe that funding, and usually underfunding, so many small projects flies in the face of how our severance tax bonds should be spent." So there's a trend now within the appropriation process to not fund projects less than $10,000. When you consider the amount of time and the simple cost of complying with the issuance process of severance tax bonds or general obligation bonds, the cost of receiving these appropriations are more than the appropriation itself. When you consider staff time to administer the grants, agency staff time to administer these grants, again, it often results in more than the appropriation itself. ALTSD is looking at this process. We are working with the Cabinet Secretary's office to take a closer look at this and find solutions to fund equipment costing between $5,000 and $10,000. So stay tuned. As we develop other processes, we will get that information out to our providers. The application timeline is as follows. On January 4th of 2017, the application became available on our website, and it is listed on this slide. The capital outlay page has the application document, the guidance document, the asset management forms, and many of the forms that we will reference throughout this presentation. Again, the deadline is April 14th at 5:00 p.m. We must receive the original 2 copies, and then please don't forget to submit a copy to your respective area agency on aging. From May 24 through May 19, the project review team will review and score the proposed project applications. And then by June 30th of 2017, ALTSD must submit its state agency infrastructure capital improvement plan to the Department of Finance and Administration. Just a little bit about the project prioritization form. If you will look at pages 6 and 7 in the guidance document, we outline the project prioritization process. There's a total of 115 points total. Requirements of the application include the certification by your fiscal agent to assure that the application is supported by the governing body, compliance with Executive Order 2013-006 must be in place. Another requirement is an operating and use agreement. Does the applicant include an agreement documenting that the political subdivision will own the capital asset and that they are willing to and able to enter into an operating and use agreement with the nonprofit to assure there's no compliance issues with the anti-donation clause. The Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan 2018 to 2022 for senior facilities is also a requirement. And then asset management forms for equipment, vehicles, and facility inventory listings. These are all basic requirements that and those documents must be included in your application. Now, there are 7 criterion that we look at and rate and rank in this application process. The first criterion is the summary and background. You will notice in the fillable form that fields have been provided so that you can provide a 250-word or less summary about your project and narrative information about your proposed project. That has a point value of 10 points. Criticality of need is another area that we look at, and this is a heavily weighted criterion with 30 points. You want to make sure you provide a compelling explanation on how the project will eliminate a risk or hazard. Do you provide a subject matter expert certification form, evaluation form? Those are required, and that has a point value of 15 points in this section. Is the proposed project a code compliance issue? And if it is, you want to include any citations you may have received from the Fire Marshal's Office, the Office of Environmental Health, or other regulatory agencies. And does the applicant document the outcome of not receiving this funding? So please take time and explain to the best of your ability in each of those questions that are posed to you in this application. Criterion 3 is funding. Does the applicant provide leverage to the project? This is an area that is a requirement now in our application. Readiness to proceed. Again, we talk about that subject matter expert evaluation form. Does your subject matter expert talk about how realistic the project is? Have you provided the mandatory quotes and cost estimates? And again, don't forget that contingency for inflationary costs. Does the applying entity describe how operating and maintenance costs will be provided upon completion of the project? Another question you want to make sure you elaborate and give plenty of description. Criterion 5, project oversight. Are there oversight mechanisms built in that would ensure timely completion of the project? We have created a table in the application where the applicant can detail each step of the process, who will be the responsible staff person, and the time frame that it's going to take to carry out each of the tasks that you will document in that oversight section. And then cost benefit. You may use your SAMS data as reported to ALTSD in the cost benefit section. And then finally, criterion 7, project management. This is a section that we evaluate here at the Aging and Long-Term Services Department, Capital Projects Bureau. We will be looking at currently funded projects and whether the grantee reports timely into the capital projects monitoring system, submits timely requests for payment, and adhering to the spend down requirement rule of 5% encumbrance and 85% expended. So you want to make sure that any grants that you currently have are being administered appropriately, and contract management is being adhered to. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara Romero, who will present on the application itself.
Again, we'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We know that your time is important, but we also want to stress that this application process is also important, especially with the new scrutiny by DFA and the executive. So we'd like to take some time to kind of go over some important portions of the application, not page by page, but generalized. So if you'll take a look at the application itself that is available on our website, it is titled 2018 General Obligation Bond Capital Outlay Request Application. As Rebecca mentioned before, if you have not downloaded that copy, please do so now. Pause your recording and take a copy of that application and have that in front of you so that we can go through each of these sections. Okay, so as Rebecca mentioned earlier, we have revised the application and the forms, and we do this every year based off of what we see after we've rated and ranked some projects. After we've looked through some of the responses, we feel like maybe there was a question that we didn't ask that was appropriate, or we weren't drawing out the responses that we received back. So we always go back every year and revise our applications. This application has been revised to be in line with critical need criteria that was set forth by the executive. Again, that application is online and available on our website at www.nmaging.state.nm.us/capital, yada, yada. It's right there on the screen. It is a fillable format, and we have tried very hard to work on the fields this year. Last year, we found out that as you were putting in lengthy descriptions on some of on the sections, that the font was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So hopefully we've corrected that situation. And as we're going through the application, I'll try and mention some of the word limits in each field. I had assumed that we had put those on the application, but it didn't appear that those came out on the electronic version. So I'll try and give you an idea of how many words are available for each of those fields. We have provided you asset management inventory listings. These should assist you in working through what your critical needs are, determining what those critical needs are. Those forms are also available at that same website. If you scroll all the way down, those forms are available. This is the first step that you have to work on before you can even start working on this application. So make sure that you are looking at these asset management listings, not only right now, but several times during the year. We have also revised our subject matter expert form. That again is also available on the website. You should have already submitted your ICIP senior facility plan. That is through the DFA website, noted there. As you know, approximately 2 years ago, I believe this is our second year, we revised the submission to exclude these senior facilities from the regular local government or tribal government submission for ICIP, and we've created our own database. And it's for the sole reason that we have our own funding source. The general obligation bond funds do pay for senior facilities, and so we thought that it was unfair that senior facilities were competing against some of these larger water and wastewater projects or road projects, which always seem to be on the priority listing of 1 through 5 for local governments. So for that reason, this new database was created. Please take advantage of that. We also had to revise our rating and ranking process to be in line with critical need criteria, to make sure that we had a fair process across the board. We have also included what we are calling a pre-screening application form. These are to be completed by your area agency on aging or your council of governments that you work with closely. Now, this application screening form was developed so that when you came up with a project that you felt might qualify for funding, that you would at that point contact your area agency on aging or your council of governments, and they would ask you a series of questions on this form. Now, if you are unable to answer quite a few of those questions, or after you've gone through the pre-screening, it's determined that this project does not qualify for a critical need, they would at that time tell you that it's probably not worth the time and effort to put forth an application because it wouldn't fare well. Okay, and as Rebecca mentioned earlier, the 2018 application purpose was to determine whether or not this project put forth is for a critical and or emergency type need. And we discussed what those were. It's a situation in which immediate action was necessary. The situation would disrupt a senior center from operating. That failure is imminent if not corrected timely. This threat can be supported by a subject matter expert. That the situation was not a direct cause of poor maintenance or neglect, and that steps were taken to prevent, alleviate, and to correct the situation, and that the local government did not have the resources required to correct the situation. We talked about the funding source. 2018 is a general obligation bond funding source. In even years, we have our general obligation bond funds available. In odd years, severance tax bond funds are available for purposes of capital outlay. Again, we mentioned how these are paid for. It's paid out of the interest, and bonds are paid out of property tax. Now let's keep in mind that we're always concerned about the funds, and you've heard around the state how we have dwindling funds and that the state is in a budget crisis. So with that being said, all of the capital outlay projects are being highly scrutinized, and it's highly recommended that you supplement your request with other sources. Now on our screen, we have listed a couple of different funding sources available that we know of. The first one is through the Community Development Block Grant Funds. Those are administered through the Department of Finance and Administration. Those funds derive from Housing and Urban Development federal funds. In addition, there is the Tribal Infrastructure Fund, administered by the Indian Affairs Department. I believe that application cycle is currently happening right now, so please go online to the Indian Affairs Department website for more information or contact somebody at the Indian Affairs Department. In addition to that, there is the Department of Transportation. They have something called the 5310 program, and that is a supplemental set of funding to apply towards vehicles through our office. The New Mexico Finance Authority also has planning funds available that you might want to look at obtaining. I believe the planning funds require a loan and match component or loan and grant component. So please contact somebody through the New Mexico Finance Authority for information regarding those planning funds. Rebecca already mentioned that our application dates for the 2018 general obligation bonds. We released our application packet on January 7, 2017. We did conduct 2 separate training sessions, a morning session and an afternoon session on January 23rd, 2017, here at our offices at the Tony Anaya building. And right now we are recording the webinar. This application is due no later than April 14th, 2017 at 5 p.m. Take into consideration that we receive all of our mail at our post office box, so make sure that you're getting those in before that deadline so that we can have a postmark date by April 14th, or else we will have to deny the request. Okay, page 1 of your 2018 application indicates what is contained in this package. The applicant information and certification, that is listed on page 2 of the form, and I'll go over that a little bit in detail. In it, we request the applicant contact information. Now, this is the name of the person who is submitting the application, who is putting the content in. We will need their name, the title, the facility that we're requesting, the address, phone number, fax number, and email address. If after you've gone through this process, you've decided that you do not want to submit a 2018 capital outlay request package, there is a checkbox that you can check so that you're indicating that you will not be submitting an application for this funding cycle. Please check that box and mail in just that page only to our office. In addition to that, this application is bound by the Executive Order 2013-006 requirements set forth by Governor Martinez in May of 2013, where it indicates that all state agencies must determine whether a grantee has adequate accounting methods and procedures to expend state grant funds in accordance with applicable law and account for and safeguard grant funds and assets required by grant funds. This requires the Aging and Long-Term Services Department to review and make recommendations based off of your latest current fiscal audit. Right now, the 2016 financial audits were due to the state auditor's office, and there are quite a few that have already cleared, so we are in the process of reviewing those. In addition to that, you must have already submitted your annual current budget to the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration Local Government Division. And you might you are already recommended to submit your quarterly and monthly reports to the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration Local Government Division as well. As for tribal governments, there is no requirement for you to submit those budgets and reports to DFA. In addition, you must have already submitted your infrastructure capital improvement plan, as Rebecca mentioned. And at the bottom, it requires the chief official of your organization to certify the application. Now, this is the person that can bind your local or tribal government to this funding application. In addition to that, we talk about a basic application. I'll go past this next slide because we've already talked about the critical need. I'll talk about the application requirements before I go into a little bit about the basic application. Remember that throughout this application, all questions must be addressed. Please do not give any blanks or NAs. You need to at least provide some type of justification. If it is not applicable, tell us why it's not applicable to this response. Tell us that it does not apply because you are a new facility and that you don't have some of this past information, whatever the case may be. Make sure that you're reviewing the guidance and ensure that the responses sufficiently address the questions so that you can get the highest point value. And Rebecca talked about page, I believe it was 5 or 6, or the last pages of the guidance, which talks about the questions that we're asking and the point value assessed for each one of those questions. Make sure that as you're looking over your responses, you go back and try and determine whether or not you've answered that question sufficiently enough to receive those highest points. Make sure that you're detailing all pertinent information relating to the critical need or urgency of the project. All we need to do is, if it is a critical need, tell us what it is. We have a critical need for a new floor because we have seniors tripping, or the walkers aren't going past that. Or there's just no stability. Whatever the case may be, make sure that you're detailing what that actual critical need is and the urgency of that project. Tell us what would happen if you did not get the funds for this project to be completed. Make sure that you also include any details to document any past efforts on your part made towards the project, that you've gone through some of the other funding sources that we mentioned earlier and you were unsuccessful for whatever reason, that your current budget is depleted so that you are not able to provide any matching funds. Things of that nature. Make sure that you document those efforts. You must, at the very least, be able to provide a detailed project description, which talks about the background of the project. You should be able to talk about the milestones and the anticipated commencement and end dates, and to help us justify in determining the critical need of the project. And I'm talking about if you are looking for funds to plan, design, and construct a facility, you should be able to tell me how big you anticipate that facility to be. 4,000 square feet building to include a commercial kitchen, men's and women's bathrooms, dining area, activity center, office space, crafts room, whatever it is, you need to be able to tell me exactly what the project is going to be. Make sure that you provide supporting documentation, your evaluation forms, the quotes, bids, plans and specifications, your cost estimates, any letters of support, your ownership documents to signify that you own the property, any match or leverage documentation, such as a copy of a grant that you currently have through another agency, or a copy of an award letter. Now, before you begin, we talked about making sure that you own the property. In the past, we've had certain appropriations where we did actually pay for land acquisition. Now, the state feels that this is probably not in the best interest. If the local government or tribal government is committed enough, they should be able to secure land for this project. So make sure the land or property for the facility is already acquired and owned by the local government. to be eligible to proceed with this application for funding. You must also include a use and/or operating agreement if you're working with a nonprofit or for-profit organization provider for services. Now, we have already developed a use and/or operating agreement. It's a template that we've already had looked at through the State Board of Finance as well as the New Mexico Attorney General's office for your use. If you are at this point where you are working through a provider and you do not have one of these agreements in place, please contact me after this webinar and I will forward you that template. Again, we talked about the importance of your asset inventory listings. Those must be completed and submitted with the application. Now, please keep in mind, even if you're only applying for renovations or code compliance, we still require that you submit all 3 forms. Now, the 3 forms are facility and fixture inventory listing, vehicle listing, asset inventory listing, and your other equipment inventory listing. All 3 forms are a requirement to be submitted with the application. We will also need to see a copy of the ICIP, and with this, I only mean that we need to see the screenshot of your submission. We don't want the whole ICIP submission. We will also need the subject matter expert form that must be completed. If you are unsure if the person reviewing your project qualifies as a subject matter expert, please contact our office. We are looking for persons in the field. If it's a roof, we're looking for somebody that owns a roofing company or a roofing contractor. If you're having plumbing issues, we're looking for a plumbing contractor or vendor. If you are having issues with vehicles, we would prefer to take the word of a dealership that talks about the types of vehicles that are suitable for your needs. Things of that nature. Architects, engineers, if you are fortunate enough to have one of those, an architect or engineer on your local government staff, they will qualify. So if you have any misunderstandings about that, please contact us first so that we can let you know whether or not the person that you're trying to utilize to complete this form is qualified through our eyes. Again, I talked about the basic application. Now, this basic application form was developed by our office so that we can try and gather more information about your facility. As you know, we have approximately 220 senior center facilities across the state of New Mexico, and we have a staff of 2 persons here at Aging and Long-Term Services that administer capital outlay projects. So it's almost impossible for us to have already gone around the state to look at every single facility. So with that being said, the most important part of this application is this basic application. We use it to gather information about the ownership of the facility. We're going to ask whether you own and you pay the maintenance cost, or if you're leasing this from another provider. If that's the case, then that's where we need to see that lease or use agreement in place before. We're asking about the condition of the facility. We're asking about the age, the condition, some of the types of repairs that have been done in the past. We're looking at the operation and maintenance of your facility, how often that's done, how much it costs you to run that facility. So you can give us an approximation of what your gas, electric, and water bills are on a monthly basis or yearly basis, whatever is easiest for you to provide to us. We're also looking at your staffing requirements, whether or not the local government provides staff to run your facility, or if you rely heavily on volunteers. We will talk about the number of services and the types of services that you provide at your facility. What this does, it helps us justify your request for funding. Let's take, for example, if the only thing that you provide at your facility is a congregate meal, you don't provide any health or exercise programs or transportation needs. If you submit a request for a transportation van, more than likely we will not be able to help you with that request because that's not a service that's provided to your facility. So make sure that you're looking at what you're putting down so that it can justify your request. We're also looking at your capital assets. We're looking at any funding sources that you have available. Some senior centers are fortunate enough to have support from the community. We've seen donations made on their behalf. Make sure you include those as part of this application. Also, it will ask about your funding from the Area Agency on Aging. We're going to also ask about any documented repairs that have been completed at the facility so that we can try and determine how long these repairs are lasting, especially like a roof. If it's been 5 years and you repaired it or replaced it and it's only lasting 5 years, then we need to look at those types of things. We're also going to ask about the uses, the size, and the location. Now that's important to us because we use industry standards when we're looking about the size and whether or not there's sufficient space for your seniors. We base that off of 15 square feet per person. So make sure you're telling us how large your facility is currently. Please tell us the location of your facility and where the nearest location is to you. And we use this when we're trying to determine whether or not you're requesting a new construction of a facility. We're going to be looking at that and see whether or not it's in the best interest of the state to be purchasing or building a new facility if there's one that's 1 or 2 miles down the road. Make sure that you include all pertinent information that would provide any insight as to the current and future capital outlay needs of the facility. You can indicate that you've gone through other funding sources before, or you've had to look at doing fundraising, whatever it is to provide for some of your equipment inside so that we know what's going on. Now keep in mind that we need 1 application per facility. So if you're a local government and you have 3 senior centers and you're applying on behalf of all 3 senior centers, we need a basic application per facility. We talked about the types of categories that we are allowing to be submitted during this funding cycle. Code compliance or renovation, and I'll go over these a little bit more in detail. Meals equipment or other equipment, please use Form A2. Vehicles, A3 form. For any new construction or major addition, we have provided A4 form for you. And the last one, A5 form, is for plan and design. Okay, for code compliance, you'll use A1. Now, code compliance is defined as protecting property values in the environment, complying with regulations such as land use and zoning ordinances, health and housing codes, uniform building and fire codes, and complying with the Americans with Disabilities Act. We will also look at identifying the specific issues that are being addressed. Please make sure that you describe how the issue was identified and how the renovations will address the issue. You can talk about the fact that you had an inspection by the fire marshal and he came and indicated that your hood vent was in compliance, or your fire suppression system was in compliance, or that your doors are hazardous. Make sure that you're including those. Also include things from the environment department if you have some type of environmental hazard as a result of your facility. The Department of Health, the Office of Environmental Health, or any other relevant oversight entities. Now, please do not include any items related to operation and maintenance of a facility, such as painting or door stops, or in the last application cycle, we saw a lot of door hardware. We can't pay for those types of things. Those are, in our eyes, considered an operational cost. On this form, you can also ask for other renovations. Now that is defined as restoring a building to an earlier condition by repairing or remodeling. Now, any projects for enlarging a facility or completing construction of a center estimated at less than $200,000 will be included on A1 form. We cannot renovate any privately owned facilities. Again, that is prohibited by the New Mexico Constitution. That is what we call the anti-donation clause. Now, a privately owned facility is defined as any facility owned by a private individual, corporation, or other organization, including nonprofit organizations and religious entities. Again, I mentioned earlier that we have developed a template for use so that we can indicate what type of services are provided in lieu of this to satisfy the anti-donation clause. When you completed A1 form, make sure that you take these things into consideration. First of all, what is the need? And were you able to clearly identify that on the application? Is it critical? And can you provide justification for that critical need? Is the facility code compliant? Again, like I said, if you've received a citation from any one of those organizations that we mentioned earlier, we need to make sure that you include that as part of this application. Is the facility in such disrepair that we may have some type of code compliance issue, like foundation issues, parking lot issues, those types of things? Is the facility not functional for the needs of the seniors? In some cases, you were, by the grace of a very nice person or the community, given a facility that you could use for your senior center, and you modified it, and over the years it's just not doing what you need it to do. Please let us know that. Could this be an urgent issue or a risk to a senior? Please let us know. My parking lot has lots of holes, and as people are crossing it, they have a potential for falling. Or where my entrance door is, when it snows in the winter, it's a hazard because there's ice everywhere. Please let us know. Can this be supported by a subject matter expert? Again, an expert in that field. Is there a plan for operating and maintenance? And we need to make sure that if you are going to be looking for funds, that you're going to be able to have the funds available to take care of that asset after it's completed. Do you have any support from the community and the governing body? And we know that first of all, if you can get this application certified. And are you able to provide a detailed project description? And I mean that literally. If you cannot tell me what the project is going to be, plan, design, construct, equip a 4,000 square foot building to include this, or to construct a 2,500 square foot parking lot with overlay and curbs and gutters, those types of things, you have to be able at a minimum to describe what your project is in detail. These are just an example of some of the things that we see. You see a roof that's in disrepair and has holes on it. We have on the wall there, it looks like some foundation issues, a hood vent that may not pass inspection, and some obvious floor issues. That's what we're looking at when we envision these code compliance projects. The next form is A2 meals equipment or other equipment. Now, this is defined as any machinery, apparatus, component, and any other article for use in preparing, cooking, and serving food, and any other article to make an action, operation, or activity easier or to serve a particular purpose. Now, Rebecca mentioned earlier that through the governor's message in the last year's capital outlay bill, we are looking at equipment that is valued at $10,000 or more. And now you see there, we have that it must also have a useful life of at least 7 to 10 years. What does that mean? Well, we talked about severance tax bond funds as well as general obligation bond funds. Keep in mind that these funds are paid over a duration of time, anywhere between 7 to 10 years, which is why we have this number. In the eyes of the state, it would not be economically feasible if we purchased items that would only last 2 or 3 years at a maximum. It would be the same as if you purchased a vehicle and you had a loan on that vehicle for 7 years, and you never took care of that vehicle. You never put oil, you never put anything into that vehicle, and that vehicle all of a sudden died on you in 2 years. Well, guess what? You still have 5 years to pay on that vehicle you took out a loan for 10 years. That is exactly what the state does with these bonds. So make sure that you understand that the item that you need to purchase should last at least 7 to 10 years and have a value of $10,000 or more. We also mentioned that that may be difficult for some of the local governments because it's a large dollar amount. So with the 2018 application, if you have submitted an application and that piece of equipment is under this threshold amount, please still submit that application. We are looking for other ways to get these very critical equipment needs funded through our office. So please include that. We will do something on our end so that we can try and get these funded. Make sure that you do not include any consumable supplies or other non-capital items such as pots, pans, flatware, trays, things of that nature. Those will be omitted from the application and not funded. Again, the same things to consider when you've completed this form. What is the need? Is it critical, and can you justify it? Have you sought other funding sources first? Could you possibly use program dollars to purchase this item? Is the equipment that you're requesting sufficient for your facility? Does it meet safety standards? Is your equipment in such disrepair that it really needs to be replaced? Are you conducting any routine maintenance? Now, this comes back to warranty issues. We need to make sure that you are complying with a weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual maintenance and routine cleaning of these items. Is this an urgent risk? And I mean, if you have a stove that is not operable and your main service that you provide is to provide meals, then obviously this is an urgent risk. We need for you to tell that. Tell us what would happen if you don't get this piece of equipment. What is the risk to those seniors? Do you have a repair and maintenance plan in place? Do you have funds that are set aside for that as well? Can the project be supported by a subject matter expert? Or will this item enhance the services provided? Take those things into consideration after you've completed A2 form for equipment and meals equipment. And then, like I said, refer back to those point values and see if you can meet the highest point values on those. And these are just a couple of examples of equipment that we've seen. We mentioned trying to get to that $10,000 threshold. How do we do that? That's really hard when you look at probably the stove that we have listed on there is probably about $6,000, something like that. Now try and be creative when you're looking at these pieces of equipment. If you need several items for your kitchen, see if the vendor can package it as a kitchen system, a kitchen cooking system, a dishwashing sanitizing system. Or look at some of these other things. I believe we have a combi oven there. That may be able to replace 2 or 3 pieces of equipment within your kitchen. And now those are well over the $10,000 mark. The tilt skillet might be able to take care of some of your needs there in the facility, and those are large ticket items. Now be reasonable when you're looking at these things and make sure that the space you have available for this piece of replacement equipment fits the area that you need to replace it with. What we don't want is that you go from a 6-burner stove to a 10-burner stove and you can't fit it in the space that you have available. Or make sure that you're looking at that hood vent as well to make sure that that hood vent can take care of the output from that stove. Things like that to consider. The next form, A3, our vehicle request form. Now this is to purchase and equip vehicles for transporting people or goods, such as home delivered meals. Make sure that at least 50% of the vehicles in your fleet are accessible for persons with disabilities, excluding your delivery vehicles. And I'm going to give you an example. If you have 4 vehicles in stock and 2 of them are meal delivery vehicles, we're looking at the last 2 of those vehicles that you have that must at least be fitted with some type of device for handicapped persons. Now that doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a lift for your van if you don't have anybody in a wheelchair. We're talking about grab bars, side steps, or the low profile vehicles that we can make sure that persons with disabilities are able to get in and out of that vehicle safely. Make sure that if you are trying to replace a vehicle from your inventory, that vehicle is listed on your inventory listing as critical, needs to be repaired, and that condition of replacement matches your request. You must identify that vehicle and submit your vehicle inventory listing. If you do have a vehicle condition inspection checklist, submit that. If you have a bill from or an invoice from a repair shop that says that it's going to cost $6,000 to put a transmission in and you just don't have the money to do that, you'll need to also include that with this application. Now keep in mind that any vehicles that you are trying to replace must have over 100,000 miles and be more than 7 to 10 years. There's that magic number again. And that you have to provide documented proof that the vehicle is in disrepair or no longer meets the needs of the center. Now, in some cases, you may have vehicles that at one point were used for both transportation and meal delivery with the hot and cold bags or coolers or thermal bags, those types of things, and that no longer serves the purpose of your facility. That now you're trying to maybe change to a hot and cold food delivery vehicle. Tell us why you're replacing that. Tell us that the 2-hour maximum that you have to deliver those vehicles, you're not meeting that because your route is too long, or where you plug your thermal bags in, it's just not working anymore. Please let us know that. Also, when looking at vehicles, make sure it's something that's suitable and that makes sense. And I'm going to give an example of vehicles that we've seen requested in the past. They are the Chevy Suburban Tahoes, and it shows that they are 7-passenger vehicles. And unfortunately, my next question to you would be, how are you going to get the seniors into that back third row? I'm not sure if you can lift those seats. They're very heavy. They're high-profile vehicles. Just remember things like that when you're looking at vehicles. Again, contact a subject matter expert, somebody at a dealership, and say, what are the types of vehicles that other centers use for transportation needs? Take their word for it that those are the types of vehicles that are most suitable for the seniors' needs. Again, make sure you're also requesting 4x4s if you have terrain that is muddy, lots of potholes, those types of things. Again, things to consider, same things. What's the need? Is it critical? Is the vehicle non-operable? Is the vehicle past its useful life of 7 to 10 years? Are you maintaining that vehicle properly according to your warranty, making sure you're getting your oil changes, your tires rotated, your 50,000 or 60,000 mile checkups, those things, make sure you include those. Do you need specific handicap requirements for your vehicle? And then can this vehicle enhance the services provided at your facility? Always keep all of these things in consideration after you've completed that form. Again, just a couple of types of vehicles that we're looking at. The next form is your A4 new construction or major addition form. Now, this is defined as building a new structure or increasing the size of a structure by more than 35% of its footprint, demolishing or reconstructing more than 35% of the exterior walls or structure membranes of a building. With any new construction or major addition request, you must include cost estimates for the equipment and furnishings. Make sure that when your architect or engineer is preparing those documents, that they have included all of those items that are going to be permanently attached to the facility. Those should be included in this form. Now, any projects for enlarging the facility or completing construction of a center estimated at over $200,000 should be included in the A4 new construction / major addition form. Now keep that in mind. If your project is estimated at less than $200,000, you will be using A1 form. Now there is one exception to this rule. Instead of using your forms for new construction or major addition, if this project qualifies as a code compliance project, we would prefer that you use A1 form for code compliance. That is our #1 priority out of our office, and those are more likely to be funded through our rating and ranking process. So if you have any questions or are unsure about that exception, please contact our office. With that being said, you have to make sure that it is definitely a code compliance issue, that you have the backup from the fire marshal's office, the health departments, whoever it is that is your subject matter expert that can quantify this as a code compliance project. We prefer it as an A1 form. These are just some examples of what we consider new construction or enlarging a facility by 35% of its footprint. Again, some of the same things to consider. What is the need for the new facility? So tell me if you're over capacity, that you have received a fire marshal's occupancy violation, that you've increased capacity by 20 or 30%. In addition to that, you need to start looking at population trends. So go back to the census and start looking at how much your community has grown in the past years and take that into consideration, because I believe that these facilities should be lasting 50, 60, 70 years. And so if you're looking at making sure that we're building a new facility, you have to take all of those into consideration as well, all of your additional population increases. Is this a critical need? And can you justify the request for a new facility? Is the facility sufficient in size? We talked about any occupancy issues you may have. And is this plan for the new facility more cost effective? Tell me that you were given an old building that has single wall instead of double wall structure. Tell me that the windows are not appropriate and lets a lot of cold air in. Things like that, that it's a terrible design. If this plan is finalized, have you consulted with the AAA or the Aging and Long-Term Services Department? And I ask that because in some cases, we're going to be looking at how many people are going to be attending your facility. And if you have a huge facility that is just overplanned and overbuilt, we will probably more than likely not support that project. What we're wanting to look is to make sure that we have sufficient buildings for our seniors. I know we all want the best for them, but we want to be realistic and feasible, and that's the next one. And have you also considered any operation and maintenance costs for this facility? And has it been budgeted? Now make sure that if you're going to build a huge building, that you go around and ask other people that have similar sized facilities, what does it cost to run this? What are your utility costs for the month, for the year? How many people do we actually need to staff this facility? Keep those in mind when you're looking at completing a new request for a new construction or major addition. And our last form is plan and design. This is our last form. I apologize. Our form there says A4 and it should actually be listed as A5. I apologize for that oversight. So it is defined as a plan, blueprint, or drawing made to scale to show the look and function or workings of a building or other object before it is made, and all other steps incident to creating a plan for a final product. Pretty simple. Normally, plan and design requests are asked to be submitted through the severance tax bond funding year. But we do realize that some of these may skip through after you've completed something or after you're looking at a code compliance project that you may need plan and design. So we did include this as part of this funding cycle. And these are just a couple of examples of plan and design that we've seen. Again, the same things. We need to consider what is the need for the new design. Is it an older building that was given to you and we need to retrofit it for better functioning of a senior center? Maybe you didn't have a commercial kitchen, things like that. Is it critical and can you justify that? Will the plan address code compliance issues? Is the plan for the new facility more cost effective? Is the new facility going to be feasible and realistic? Again, we look at cost benefit when we're looking at this. Have you consulted with the Area Agency on Aging or the Aging and Long-Term Services Department before that has been finalized? And have you considered operation and maintenance costs for the new facility? And has it been budgeted? So after we've gone through all of the forms, make sure that we go through the next steps in order to start preparing yourself. So the first thing to do, and this is probably the most important thing, is to gather all of your asset inventory listings. Complete those asset inventory listings. It's only after those are completed that you will know what the condition is of your assets and whether or not you need to repair or replace those. Or if it's just a simple matter of you need to increase your maintenance or look at your warranties. So make sure those are completed first. Now then you want to meet with council or committee members to discuss what your needs are for your center. You should download the application from our website, put that on your desktop, that way you can work at your leisure. Start contacting your subject matter experts to come and evaluate the projects. I know that for some smaller communities, there may not be subject matter experts in your area, but you can propose that they come by when they're around the area. You may want to offer them a meal at the center. You may give them a little bit of incentive to come and look at your project. Make sure you start gathering quotes or cost estimates for the project. And now when we're looking at these quotes, we understand that this money may not be available until spring of 2019. With that being said, make sure that you guys are looking at inflationary costs and including those in your cost estimate, and actually put on there, the cost for the new piece of equipment is going to be $10,000. Also include any delivery, shipping, and installation costs with these items that you're getting quotes and estimates for. And that you're including at the bottom a 10% inflationary cost, whatever it may be. If you've determined that 7% is what you're going to be requesting, include that at the bottom, but state that it's the inflationary cost or contingency fees. After you do that, start looking at developing a team. Create a team meeting. Look at the tasks that are required. One is to contact a subject matter expert. One is to complete the inventory listings. One is going to be to start preparing the application itself. And then start going through and making sure that you guys understand what is being put on the application is understandable. Divide those up. Somebody look at those quotes and say, yeah, those quotes made sense. I understand what we need. Somebody take a look at the inventory listings. Well, I was there and I looked at that piece of kitchen equipment and it is in perfect shape. I don't know what you saw. Especially when it comes to the application, make sure that you are going back, reading your information that you put into, especially those background and narrative sections, and indicating that what the real need is, that you understand what that is, and that you're going back to that guidance document and looking at those questions that we ask so that you get the highest point value. The next thing would either be to schedule a visit, a telephone conference with your area agency on aging or council of governments to screen the application first. That way you're not submitting an application that may not meet a critical need. That way you're not wasting a lot of time, both time on your end and time from the people who are looking at these projects, the raters and the rankers. And remember that part of our rating and ranking team is comprised of the Department of Finance and Administration. At that point, you'll determine if the project is critical or if it can wait until the next funding cycle. Again, Rebecca already talked about the project prioritization system. This year, there is a total possible amount of points of 115. Now, we talked about number 7, the project management section. That is something that is only reviewed by aging and long-term staff, and that will be Rebecca and myself. And we're going to look back at how you performed with past appropriations and how often you're submitting your requests for reimbursements, if you're completing your monthly reporting, things of that nature. How often have we reverted funds for your local government? So this is something that we take seriously. If you have not had a chance to go in and update your capital projects monitoring report for the month, do so now. Continue to do so. It's especially important now during the time of the legislative session. They are pulling these reports constantly and they're looking at the progress of your project. If you do have open projects, make sure that you're in constant communication with our office, telling us what the holdup is, why this project is delayed, and make sure that that is noted in those reports and that you're relaying that same information to our office so that we're on the same page. With that being said, that That concludes our presentation for this application. As we indicated, this is our contact information, both our email address as well as our telephone numbers. Please call us if you have any questions on this application process. We will be more than happy to help you. We also are available if you want to come down and visit with us for a technical assistance visit. If you are asking that we go out and visit you during the session, it is very hard for us to get out of the office, but we will try and do whatever we need to try and assist you with this application. Again, thank you for listening in.